Hi, and welcome to Check Your Thread, a podcast about sewing more sustainably. My name's Zoe, and I'm obsessed with sewing. I've been blogging about it for over 13 years and am the creator and host of the popular handmade wardrobe challenge, Me Made May. But like many people, I've become increasingly concerned about the climate crisis and the way my lifestyle contributes to it. So in this podcast, I'll be nerding out about making clothes whilst exploring how to minimise the negative impact that it may have. I really hope you'll join me on this journey. Hello, lovely listeners. Welcome to Check Your Thread. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Are you feeling festive? Stressed? A bit of both? At risk of sounding like a bit of a festive misery, I must admit that I've been feeling really rough with intense allergies lately. But I'm hanging on in there and counting down the minutes until my kids are off school and I don't need to drag them through their morning routine to get them to school for a couple of weeks. I'm definitely going to miss a bit of peace and quiet in the day. I'm also massively looking forward to seeing my mum and some of my friends to celebrate Christmas with them. Touch wood. So this is the last episode before Christmas, and if you celebrate that, then I wish you an awesome one. I was considering giving myself a week off of the podcast over the Christmas period, but I've got some great episodes in the bank already, so I'm going to continue releasing episodes as normal. You're welcome! Speaking of episodes, I need a favour from you. So I'm prepping an episode for a couple of weeks' time about New Year's resolutions or goals relating to sewing more sustainably. So if you have any thoughts on this, or if you've already got some plans in mind that you hope to implement in 2022 that's going to make your sewing more sustainable, please share. Let me know what they are via email, zoe@checkyourthread.com, or via Instagram. You can find me at checkyourthread, and I'll include them in the hopes of inspiring others. Thanks in advance. So if you've found any spare minutes to sew lately, what have you been making? As I said, I've been feeling pretty under the weather, which has greatly impacted my sewing abilities, but I've started to get back on it to make the dungarees for my son that he's been asking for. I plan to give them to him for Christmas, so I need to get on it and do a few steps every evening once he's in bed. If you're looking for some fascinating sustainability stuff to consume over the holidays, I've got a couple of little suggestions. Firstly, I thoroughly recommend episode 124 of the Sustainable-ish podcast. It features a conversation between the host, Jen Gale, and writer, J.B. McKinnon, about his epic-sounding new book, which is called The Day the World Stops Shopping. That conversation has given me so much food for thought. In particular, the author's suggestion that globally we need to consume 25% less of everything to alleviate the impact of climate change. So interesting. Have a listen for yourself and let me know what you think. I also really enjoyed a recent article in the Guardian newspaper online. It was about a study that was undertaken at a university very close to where I live that looked into the productivity of urban food growing. It was really interesting and intensely inspiring. I really want to double down on my efforts to grow as much food as possible in my small outside space next year. I'll link to both the podcast episode and the Guardian article in the show notes. Right, big thanks this week to new Patreon supporters Kelsey and Kim. Thank you both for helping make new episodes happen. If you feel you're in a position to support the podcast, please remember that you can commit to absolutely any amount at all, and all are gratefully received. Just head over to the Check Your Thread Patreon, either by following the link in the show notes or on the website checkyourthread.com, or by going to patreon.com/checkyourthread to do so. Okay, let's chat about today's offering, episode 21. I had the pleasure to chat with New Zealand-based teacher, maker and sustainability phenomenon, Sarah Lancaster, aka Sarah Sew Love. Her business, Sew Love, stands for Learn to Sew and Love the Earth. After setting up a social enterprise to help people learn sewing and mending skills 8 years ago, her business has seen a number of incarnations, including a period on the road running classes and workshops from her camper van at festivals around New Zealand. Its current iteration sees her produce a fabulous fun-filled product range using reclaimed textiles. She also works in an education role at a zero-waste organisation, which we get into this conversation also. I cannot express quite how much fun it is to follow Sarah on Instagram. So even if you don't have your own account, follow the link in the show notes to get a visual taste of her vibrant aesthetic and awesome energy. Sarah absolutely puts to bed any argument that you have to be completely serious and joyless to be passionate about the environment or have any impact. So whatever it is you're currently doing whilst listening to this, be prepared to feel the love. Enjoy. Hi, Sarah. Thanks a million for staying up past your bedtime to talk to me today. Welcome to Check Your Thread.
Thank you for having me. Morena, good morning to you over the other side of the world.
Yeah. So would you mind introducing yourself by telling us who you are, where you are, and what fills your days?
Totally. Well, I'm coming to you from a beautiful town called Whangaroa, Raglan in New Zealand. And it's about a town of about 3,000, swells to about 20,000 in summer. It's a really cool, creative, sustainable town that I've been living in the last 5 years and sewing in my house here and work at the recycle centre, Extreme Zero Waste.
Awesome. Which we're going to ask you all about in a bit. I can't wait to hear about that. You're a bit south. You're on the west coast, a bit south from Auckland. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Where were you before there?
Before there, I actually was traveling around New Zealand. So I was like a snail. My home was my camper van, Cecil, that I lived in. Yeah. So I was traveling around for 2 years, for the summer months.
Yeah.
Teaching sewing around New Zealand. But I lived in Auckland for 10 years before that and grew up in Thames in the Coromandel, which is the other coast, but equally as sunny and lovely as this. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's the dream, living in a caravan.
Yeah, it was. It was good fun.
I travelled a little bit around New Zealand literally 20 years ago. When I was at university, I'm not going to put this in the podcast, but when I was at university, I won a scholarship to study at Massey University in Wellington for 6 months. So I was in Wellington. Yeah, I loved it. It was so good. I loved it there so much. And then in my little like Easter break, I went down to the South Island and I went up to Auckland a little bit. I didn't get to travel as much as I wanted to, but I saw a little bit. I wish it wasn't so far away. I wish I could go back.
Yeah, that's neat to know that you've been here.
So I found your account on Instagram and I saw that you make all these amazing, colourful accessories using reclaimed fabrics. So obviously that in itself caught my eye. And then I saw this video that you did showing people different ways to wear their bum bags depending on what dance moves they want to bust out. And I loved it so much. I was like, I need to speak to this woman.
Yes. The bum bags has just taken my life by storm the last 5 years.
So before we dig more into your awesome products and reclaimed fabrics and so on, can you tell us a bit more about your relationship to sewing? Like how and when did it become your jam?
Yeah, I always was sewing. I think my mum sewed a lot of our clothes, but she never taught us how to sew specifically. But I used to just have a go on her machine and I broke all her needles like any 10-year-old would. Yeah, I kind of like was really into creativity and making things, but I didn't really do sewing at school and at high school. Mum was like, you're not going to get a job with sewing. So, focus on these good scholarly subjects, though I did drama and dance and was always pursuing a career to be a drama teacher. Right. So now I say I teach sewing dramatically. That's how it's paid off in some way.
I would love to be in one of your dramatic sewing classes. That would be incredible.
Yeah. Well, it's helpful, I think, now in business is like you wouldn't have thought business success is around like dancing about on reels and like getting your brand out there. And so this is natural for me. I just absolutely love it. Like fills my heart with joy dancing about. But I kind of didn't necessarily do a lot of sewing in my young adult days. But when I decided to start a social enterprise, because I discovered what social enterprise was at like 23. No one taught us that at school. And I was reading all of these really inspiring magazines like Peppermint Magazine and Frankie. And they were they were talking about social enterprise. I was like, well, you could just like see a cause that you like for the environment or for society, something that you wanted to help, and you could create a business around it. And so, and also doing something you love. And I was like, well, I love sewing and creativity. What could I do? So that's where that I launched into creating So Love about 8 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily a huge drive for sewing, but sewing was the tool to live more sustainably or to teach sustainability. So the task of sewing, like people would do it through making green smoothies and talking about organic food or yoga, but my tool was to do it through sewing.
Sure. So what form did that take initially then? Was that the classes?
Yeah, I did workshops, and then my dream was, I mean, that back then it was sewing blog land, and I had heard about Sew Over It, and there was nothing like that here in New Zealand, and there was one in Paris.
Right.
There was a sewing lounge in France, and I was like, wow, that is so cool. Like people coming together to share resources and learn in a social setting. So within the year, I had started a sewing lounge up in Auckland.
Oh, amazing.
So it was like an internet cafe, I called it, like an internet cafe without internet. And
sewing machines instead of computers. Wow. So how did you get that off the ground?
I was very lucky to be a part of this acceleration program called Art Venture. So, and I hope there's lots of these in different communities where they had a bunch of artists. We were mentored through a program and had some seed funding, which I could pitch for. You didn't just automatically get it. You had to write a business plan, and it was just kind of like fast tracking creatives into a business mindset. And so invoicing and finances, and like I didn't even know how to do a lease agreement or things like that. So we had a lot of mental support and psychological like unpacking of beliefs, which I think is really helpful for a lot of people starting out and have imposter syndrome and like all of these things.
Wow, that sounds amazing. That sounds very progressive.
It was great. Yeah. Art Venture, it was called. So very, very lucky. It's like a kickstart, and that was, 8 years ago. But I was just mainly teaching sewing then. Like, it's funny when I reflect on it now, I had some products for sale in my store, in my sewing lounge, but I didn't really move much product then. Most of my income and customers were around workshops.
So that was before you went traveling?
Yeah, and then they were gentrifying the whole street. Karangahape Road was turning into restaurants, and so all the little vintage stores and kitschy bookstores in that store had to close. So I crowdfunded to buy a camper van, and I put solar panels on the roof so I could teach, take the sewing lounge and put it onto wheels.
Oh my God, you're living my dream.
It was great. And the crowdfund really helped because people were invested and waiting for me to come to their different towns. And so I think it's funny. It may have been like, I think about if I did it now and just how the rise in people using social media and connecting in that way and being like open and available and interested into different things. Like, I think it was too far out of the box. People didn't know what to do with it. So they'd be like, what's that? And so obviously you got lots of curious people coming over and interacting and like mending things and sewing bags for the farmers market. Actually, interesting fact I observed when I was teaching sewing in Auckland in my sewing lounge, 90% of my sewing students were female. And when I was on the road, 90% of my sewing students were male.
Really?
They were just like up for it. They were just like, yeah, I'll fix my own pants. Yeah, mean. And so they would just jump in, and I noticed that they thought of it as like a practical skill thing that they wanted to learn or do. And I mean, there's plenty of females as well. But too often I heard the comments that they thought it was domestic, and they were like not wanting to be a part of something that was being that domestic housewifey. So it's like this feminist thing to not do it.
That's so interesting.
Blew my mind because I mean, there's so many females in the sewing community that aren't into it for domestic goddess reasons.
It's more of, I think most people kind of see it more as a kind of creative outlet, wouldn't you say?
And radical, revolutionary, like self-expression and everything.
That's so interesting that you still experienced that kind of hangover from a previous generation or two, I guess. So the majority of your business now is making and selling your incredible products. Is that right?
Yeah. So a few years ago, I was going to festivals to pop up and do workshops, sewing workshop, costume repairs and stuff to try and reduce the impact that festivals were having.
Amazing.
And I thought, I might make some bum bags for some friends. I was like, that'd be kind of funny. No one really wears those anymore, but they're so like useful for you when you're dancing. You can dance so much wilder when you're like hands-free. So I made some for some friends and then put it out there, and they just went like straight away.
Wow.
Did just bing, bing, bing on my phone. So I was like, well, I guess I'll make another 10.
Yeah.
And then I was like 3 days before the festival, I'm like, okay. And I literally have been a full-time bum bag maker for the last 4 years now since then. And it was just before that trend came back.
Yeah.
For New Zealand.
You were ahead of the curve.
Yeah. But I've sent some to the UK and to the States and Germany and yes, Canada, crazy. With selling on Etsy.
So good.
But it's all just scraps.
Yeah.
It's all little scraps of fabric that I piece together. So I really like mashing up different patterns and things like that. Yeah.
So, I have so many questions. So they're all made from reclaimed textiles. So why did you decide to include that as a key aspect of your business?
Because that's what I generally just sew with. I think I've bought new fabric in the last couple of years, like getting into like just the fabric store, the beautiful linens and stuff. But I've generally just always sewn with secondhand fabric from op shops or thrift stores. There's a really cool thing called Fabric-a-Brac, which is a market in various cities around New Zealand where hoarders like you and I can go along with a table and sell our fabrics. And so you can go there and buy from people's stashes rather than trade me.
What's that called?
Fabric-a-Brac.
Oh, that's a dream.
Yeah. And so it's different places. So yeah, and I guess I had lots of scraps in the camper van with me from different sewing projects, and I love like just beautiful pieces. I've actually got my bum bag right here, my favorite one. It's just got like lots of memories. Like this was a dress from my high school. This I got in Hawaii. This was one of my favorite tartans, and this mushroom print is an offcut from a friend from her project. So I think of her when I'm wearing this.
So it's all stuff that if you work with all stuff that you've just accumulated from various sources.
Yeah, and I remember my dad helping me move out of the shop into a camper van. And obviously, when you're downsizing, you always send some boxes home to mum and dad when your life is in a camper van. I remember him saying, we're literally transporting rags across the countryside, Sarah. Rags. And now I've been able to pay all my bills with making beautiful one-of-a-kind bum bags out of said rags.
So you've got such an amazing eye for like colour and print combinations. Does that come naturally to you? Or is it something you've had to work towards?
No, I haven't really worked towards it.
The way you combine things looks so good. Whenever I try and do something, it looks a mess.
Well, I wonder about that because I think of this similar to dancing, and people go, I can't dance. I don't look like that when I dance. And it's like, it actually doesn't matter what you look like. It's how you feel when you're doing it. And if you feel amazing dancing, or if you just rock the mashup of something, like basically a lot of my stuff I put together and I'm like, it's so wrong, it's good. And so it's kind of like a confidence or a daring kind of poke fun at, like when I do a festival, I try and make heaps and heaps of bum bags, and I'll try and make the most garish one, like the most horrendous one. And we're like, this is it. And then so often that's one of the first ones to go because it's just
so interesting.
You just got to be playful and go, oh, let's just put them together, and more is more when it comes to patterns with me.
But you have a really fun and playful like personal style as well, don't you? Like in the clothing that you make and wear. So how much of your wardrobe is made by you?
More so in the last few years because I have been inspired by everyone doing Me Made May, and it's just like, wow, this is so cool. It made me reflect on my wardrobe, but I would say 90% of it's op-shopped stuff that I then may refashion. So I haven't made it from scratch.
Yeah.
I'm not one to have a capsule wardrobe. I've actually got like 4 wardrobes.
Have you?
But I think I've always loved dressing up, and while I loved that, and then I discovered and learned all about the danger of fast fashion and like pollution and unethical manufacturing. And now I'm putting the two together of going, how can we love dressing up and expressing ourselves and being creative and feeling fabulous and having, you know, great frocks to wear out to a party or something. And at the same time, like, be mindful and kind to the planet and our impact that we're having.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the things that appeals to me so much about your Instagram account is that you obviously do really care and feel passionate about sustainability and the impact on clothing and in lifestyle in general. But you just clearly have so much fun. Like, it's not about being really worthy and really kind of like super serious and it has to be like so intense. You can do it and you can have fun and you can enjoy yourself, and I think that's such an important message, and I think it's something that gets forgotten a lot. And the fact that you are having such a great time with color and with print and using reclaimed textiles is the perfect, you know, basis for that, isn't it? Because you can explore and you can play and you haven't just spent, you know, 20 quid a meter on something, you know, like it doesn't matter if it doesn't work out. It's okay. You had fun. And I think it's such a good message.
The process. No, thank you. That's good to hear the feedback. And I always think that if we want more folks to come and join us at this party of loving the planet and being more mindful of our consumption and what we're doing with our days, it's just like you can't shame anyone and like grill them into joining you. It's just like, well, I'm doing this. We're all doing this.
We're having a great time.
Having a blast. You're welcome to come join us. And I think with a lot of things, people within sustainability, people think that you're missing out on stuff. And so you have to go without things. But for example, going without a takeaway coffee cup might be frustrating for some people, but like having a beautiful pottery cup that someone that you know has made and it's gorgeous and it reflects your personality, or you know you voted with your dollar and supported that local potter, having your coffee in that, not that I drink coffee, having your hot chocolate in that as like a beautiful, nice ritual in the morning is like that one experience has offered you so many more layers of joy and presence than a wham bam fast takeaway coffee cup convenience. It's just like one has just got so much more to offer, so you're not missing out at all when you think sustainability.
That's so interesting. When I've forgotten my like little keep cup thing and I do end up having a coffee, one of those disposable ones, I always feel like so rubbish about the fact that I've got this thing that I then have to put in the bin, that it kind of spoils the coffee a little bit, you know. I don't enjoy it as much anyway. So, it's so true that there's more layers of enjoyment to be had sometimes when you take a more sustainable route or approach.
And sewing wise, you know, if you could buy any fabric off a roll that you wanted, whereas if you have to be secondhand fabric resourcer, you kind of go in reverse. You're like, oh, I found this fabric. What's it going to inspire me? Or if you do need to make something, what else could I transform into this? So could I use sheets and curtains or net curtains, or is there a garment already half sewn up or that I could unpick and then use the fabric? So rather than it just being on autopilot, I order the things I need to sew the thing and then I have the thing. It's kind of being resourceful with secondhand fabrics. It's the design kind of might twist and turn a little too as you're inspired by what you stumble across.
It's definitely a more creative process, isn't it, than, as you say, like I bought the fabric, I've bought the pattern, I've put them together, I've put it on Instagram, repeat, you know?
Totally.
I mean, I don't want to criticize people, you know, because everyone's busy and everyone sews for different purposes and different reasons. So, you know, if that's your thing, then that's awesome. But there is a lot of fun to be had and a lot of creativity to be found from approaching it, as you say, from like, what have I got? What can this become? Rather than I want to make X out of Y equals Z, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Even if you are sewing normal fabric from a store, like the process is just so much slower.
So can you give us some tips of what to look for when sourcing reclaimed textiles to sew with?
Yeah, I always look for obviously colors, but I also look with my hands.
Mm-hmm.
So looking for different textures that might appeal to you, and like going through the racks if you're looking for fabric that is from other clothes, going through items that might be big dresses and things like that offer a lot of fabric.
Yeah.
And I go through and I touch them all to see what they're made of, and also see if there's anything interesting like laces and trims and things that you can also celebrate. So rather than unpicking and removing them, we're like, what already is awesome about this garment that someone's made that I can leave and enjoy and celebrate?
That's a good point. Yeah.
Because sometimes it breaks my heart to see things hacked up. Like, oh, don't hack this like beautiful hard work that's all been done, chop that off and throw that out. And I remember a few summers like cutting off jeans to make jean shorts, and you've just like made so much waste because they've all these legs, because this person came to me with all these legs of jeans saying, oh, you can do something with these.
I would love loads of I just saw something online yesterday it was a company that makes, I can't remember the company off the top of my head, but they make amazing kind of like patchwork denim garments, small order kind of indie business thing, and most of it comes from the legs of manufacturers who've manufactured full jeans for then companies just to cut the legs off, and then they just sell the jean shorts, like big brands that sell the jean shorts, but they would want jeans. When you think of all those legs swimming around out there, that's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. Also, when you think of how much water goes into making a pair of jeans,
and you're getting discarding most of it.
Yeah, because they're mostly legs, and the way that the shorts are even getting more and more shorter, that like it is like 95% leg.
That's so true. And denim is one of the more resource hungry garments to produce, isn't it? Because of the cotton and a lot of the dyeing and then the finishing, and if there's any of those kind of like faux faded effects and stuff, that's really labor intensive and often quite damaging as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah, acid wash and blasting them, and
so you like to work with denim. You got loads of legs.
Yeah. I mean, people offer me up their scraps all the time, and it's been really cool connecting with other makers around New Zealand and asking them for offcuts. And I just did a collab with a girl who's also called Sarah from My Keeper, and she actually was quite cool. She sews dresses, but she sells them, but she also rents them.
Yeah.
And she, even with her rented dresses that you post back, is a reusable courier bag that she's sewing.
Yeah.
And it has a clear pocket, so you put the courier tag in and it's zipped up.
Oh.
And so you can send your rental dresses back to her, which I love. And now we've done a collab with her bag with her offcut. I do like the opportunity for different local brands here in New Zealand to work together, and like, I guess we're transporting rags across the countryside again.
That brings me neatly to my next question, which is, what does your stash look like and how is it organized?
I mean, do I say the one that I want you to hear?
No, I want brutal honesty.
So I recently did clean up my sewing room. We're just coming out of a lockdown here in my region in New Zealand, so I've been doing a lot of messy sewing, taking over the house. But I have a weird setup in my sewing room that most of my sewing room is big boxes of tiny offcuts, so probably around 20 by 5, couple of hands. So small offcuts, but that's most of my sewing room is boxes of those, which is what I use to make handbags, and I just can't throw them out. And I will continue to like buy stuff as I find it in op shops. And then I've got a few boxes that are stuff like nice fabrics for my classes for people to learn to sew on, and like basic beginner cottons and things, which are all sourced secondhand or donated to me from people clearing out their stashes. And then I've got some big banana boxes full of towels, and then the towels just stack on top of them.
Yeah, because we haven't talked about your amazing ponchos yet either.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about those?
Totally. And it's just like, it's a couple of towels put together to make a poncho, but they're secondhand towels and retro florals, beach towels. and they're really cozy and comfy. And in this surfy town, everyone wears surf ponchos to get out of your wetsuit safely without flashing everyone in the car park. But most of the ones that you get from the surf stores are all microfiber towels, so they're all made out of plastic, basically, and shedding plastic every time you wash them. And I thought, I haven't been the first person to invent them. There's plenty of people making towel ponchos out of old towels. But to me, it's great because it's seeing something that people use, but let's do it with natural fiber, so it's not shedding microplastics into the waterways, but also a resource, instead of shipping them in plastic from the other side of the world, find a resource that's lying around us that people don't. Well, people still need towels, but
but people, if they're buying new towels, they want to get like a set, don't they? They don't just want random odd one or two necessarily. I mean, I would, but most people.
Me too. But what was really interesting when I started making the towel ponchos is I never have factored in the cost of buying materials and traveling to buy materials before in my items.
Right.
Because everything was offcuts and it's all small bits.
Sure.
But, I've got to go on a buying trip if I don't have enough towels. And during this lockdown, I had people from Facebook and Instagram community op shopping for me because their areas weren't in lockdown, and they op shopping and post me towels so that I could keep making ponchos because it's Christmas time and so many people want them. And I couldn't leave. Our op shops weren't open, but it's the bulkiest item. And when I was traveling in the camper van, it was really hard because I wanted to buy every cool towel I saw.
Of course,
But they're bulky.
Were you like sleeping on piles of towels?
Yeah, 100%.
Amazing.
That's totally it.
So your Etsy shop where you sell your ponchos and your bomb bags, so you don't have stock permanently on there, do you? You kind of like upload and then it's like a crazy scramble. Like, how does it work?
Yeah, I used to, and then I just thought I was putting on a lot of pressure on myself to always have it full.
Yeah.
And the point of being self-employed is to live a happy life. And so I was like, stop putting pressure on yourself, just do what you need to do. And as I took on other jobs and stuff, I wasn't doing this full time. And so I was like, I'm just going to put them out when I can.
Yeah.
So I don't think last year I didn't put out any bum bags. And then other than the festivals and things, and then this year or the last few months, I've been doing every Friday, dropping about a dozen in my Instagram, and people just DM me. So it's really interesting seeing how online platforms, like not being able to go to markets, and online platforms have helped small businesses not just survive but maybe thrive. I don't know if
because also you're not sitting on loads of stock as well, are you? Like if you have to fill up your Etsy shop, then that's half a room full of stuff you've then got to keep.
Totally. I'm looking forward to posting some towel ponchos out and having some more room in the sewing room. There is a few boxes of like Sarah's favorite fabrics, which take a while for me to cut into. Yeah, and sheets, like boxes of sheets. So I try to, and I learned how to make bras last year. That was really fun. So now I've got a couple of boxes of lingerie. So it's all kind of banana boxes stacked upon banana boxes.
If I lived on my own, my situation would be very similar, I think.
Yeah.
If I could get away with it.
Yeah, and it's definitely something I'm privileged and grateful for is not having, I love having flatmates, but when I also love having massive amount of creative space. So it's a dream.
So that's really interesting that what you're talking about with the beach ponchos, because I was basing this purely on your Instagram feed, but it really feels like where you living on the coast of New Zealand, it really kind of inspires you and feeds into your business. And that seems that's kind of validated my assumption, because the fact that you saw that this is an item that people around you wear and need regularly, and then you fueled that in a more sustainable way.
Yeah. Like I never set out to make and sell products. Like my mission was to be a service social enterprise, which I help people learn to sew, learn some sewing skills so they can mend their clothes, throw less stuff away. And so to me, I'm always keeping in check whether I'm turning into a manufacturing machine for the sake of just selling stuff.
Yeah.
And so I try and think of, the ponchos are like a local cotton-based sustainable alternative to other things. but also the bum bags to me are like to encourage people to express themselves, live hands-free, get outside, get moving, whether they're hiking, going dancing, dog walking, rowing in the dinghy, like whatever it is. It's just like having a few things on you that you need to, and just living your best life.
Yeah.
But also it doesn't have to travel around the world to get here.
I definitely found that when I was in New Zealand that it's definitely a much more outdoorsy, active kind of lifestyle. It seems that pretty much everyone I spoke to went kayaking at the weekend, or they had something. I didn't really fit very well with that aspect of New Zealand life. I love that, your products completely fit with that.
And I think that the opportunity for nature growing up for anyone in the world, but I notice specifically for kids who have the opportunity to go to the beach or see the sea or be in the bush and be away from technology, they have more of a attachment and a reason to protect nature and love it and respect it, and it reflects in different consumer choices, and less littering. If you've spent a day playing at the beach and you see all the litter, you're less likely upstream when you're in an urban environment to litter, or hopefully think about choices. And you can't ask people to care for beautiful native trees and birds and insects if they've never experienced it.
That's so true. That brings us right to talking about your role at the recycling centre. Can you tell us about that?
Oh, yeah. Extreme Zero Waste, which was one of the first recycling centres that started in New Zealand. And it was started by a bunch of families who just really cared about cleaning up the waterways and cleaning up the harbour. You had to go upstream to where the landfill is and start cleaning that up. So Extreme's been going for 20 years, and I've always admired it. Like when I visited here, when I was touring in my van, absolutely loved it. And I thought that would be my dream place. If I was ever to like do something after So Love, I'd love to work in education, maybe work at a dump shop or at a recycling centre. And so I nabbed my second dream job.
Amazing. So you've got them both concurrent. That's amazing.
Yeah. And they can work well together. So I do it part-time, and I do education for them, waste minimisation. Was in schools, but also now applying everything I've learned from like online comms and behaviour change stuff, I guess. So
good.
Encouraging people. It's the same thing of inviting people to come and join the party of living a life with less waste and a less impact on the planet.
So give me an example of like how you would spend a day when you're doing that job.
I sometimes go up onto site, which is recycle centre. It's got an awesome tip shop or a secondhand store.
I love a tip shop.
And I answer people's queries that have come in from the community about their collections. We've got probably working on a couple of different campaigns, whether it's around reducing food waste, or maybe it's Plastic Free July, or preparing for influx of all the holiday makers over summer. So I'm thinking about different ways that we can communicate to them how we do things in Raglan, like bring your keep cup, or reusable shopping bags, and don't throw out stuff, your food waste. I take a bunch of photos and try and convince my coworkers that TikTok is something that we should be doing.
Are they not on board?
Well, I don't know if they're on board while they're like sorting plastics and tin cans and things. I'm like, this would be a great dance. And I tend to do that in the mornings and then come home and do sewing.
That sounds like a really nice balance as well. Like you've got a job where you're interacting with people, and then you've got some time to be on your own and focus on that.
I do like that balance, because I used to be on my own all the time at home, and I would buy lunch out every single day so that I could interact with people, sit outside the cafe and chat. So it's really nice to be a part of a team that's on the same mission to work towards zero waste. And it's just with different materials. But textile waste is a huge part of recycle centres anywhere as people are throwing away clothes or donating clothes and fabrics. And it's one of the hugest carbon footprint by far than any other industry. When you factor in all of the production, not just about the disposal.
So what do you wish that every household knew or did differently that you feel would have a significant impact towards getting towards zero waste?
When I hear you say every household, I'm going to try and think of something really simple, because I know not everyone can compost.
Well, take that question in any way you want.
Yeah. No, but it's important, because I think that a lot of sustainable solutions or tips are for people who have the time or the space, have a garden to compost.
Yeah.
So, I mean, food waste is a really huge thing to keep out of landfill, because it makes landfill so much worse because it breaks down differently, and it makes whatever's in landfill break down worse, more methane. So trying to keep our food waste out of landfill is so huge. So I would say compost, but actually we don't all have compost bins maybe in shared community gardens, but I would say loving eating leftovers, so trying to have less food scraps. So roasting a whole cauliflower rather than just chopping off the top, that sort of stuff. Loving eating your leftovers and scraps. But also I'm really big into sharing resources, and that not everyone in your street needs to have a lawnmower. Like when I started So Love, it was sharing sewing machines and tools. You can meet people, you can have shared experiences by joining tool libraries or just asking your neighbours for things. So in lockdown, asking our neighbours, trying to be resourceful, we have our crafters group. I'm like, has anyone out there got a white invisible zip? I don't want to go into the city to buy one. I don't want to buy one online. Just asking in your community and sharing resources is probably has a huge impact, I think, but probably a really fun thing to do to live a more sustainable, localized life.
Yes. Yeah. And you don't have to order everything brand new from Amazon. You could just go around the corner and borrow something.
I think for a lot of people, ownership is big. Ownership gives you freedom to do things, but actually it doesn't necessarily need to be ownership. It's accessibility. So you don't need to buy a book. You can just get a library card. Once you've read the book, someone else can read it. Not everyone needs to.
Yeah, because then also you've got the burden of having all the stuff, don't you?
Totally.
So along the same vein, what can us sewers do to reduce the impact of our activities, would you say?
Yeah, good question. Be mindful of how we're cutting things out. And I know that a lot of the listeners for your community, Zoe, I might already be sewers at home. I deal a lot with people learning to sew from the scratch. So it's like their first sewing project, and they might just be buying their first bit of fabric or bringing in their first garments to refashion. So I always think about trying to make the most of what this beautiful, precious resource is in front of us. If it's a pair of jeans or if it's fresh, new 3 meters of linen, how can we do it justice? It's been on such a journey to get to our hands, from the natural resource that it originally was extracted from the planet, wherever it was, it's been on such a big journey. So it's kind of moving away from disposable fashion and thinking of it can be kind of, do you ever get scared to cut into fabric when you're like, oh, am I going to commit this fabric to this dress?
Yes.
That's truly honoring it. You're like, is it ready? Are you going to be better as trousers or are you going to be better as dungarees?
Yes,
what
is
it going to be? And I'll just stare at it for months.
That's so funny. I was just having a conversation a couple of evenings ago with two very lovely sewers called Kate and Rachel. They were down in this area to go on a bag making course, and they invited me out for a drink, and I was like, this is going to be so good. So we went for a drink. We were having a lovely conversation, and I was telling them about this one piece of fabric that I've now owned for maybe 2.5 years. And the amount of brain space this fabric takes up, this one length of 2 meters of fabric. I know that it's like a kind of dead stock designer bit of fabric. It's fine. I can't get any more if it goes wrong. The process is that I've been having about what to make from this 2 meters of fabric.
Totally. How are you going to do it justice? Have you ever pinned fabric on the wall before? Because I feel like even when we sew them into clothes, they sit in the cupboard. You do wear them out and enjoy them, but they are often in the wardrobe. Whereas when they're in your fabric room, they're in the fabric cupboard.
Yes.
And so I hang a lot of garments on my walls in my bedroom and stuff as like art pieces, I guess.
That's a nice idea.
So I wonder, with your precious piece that you've had for a long time, pinning it up on the wall for a while and just having it as an art piece as itself could be nice.
Yeah, maybe I should just do that. Just make it into curtains and enjoy it in that way.
Yeah. But actually, as you were telling that story, I was thinking of this piece of fabric, it is like an African wax fabric. It's black and brown, which is not usually what I would wear, but I still have it. Yeah. And I literally think gosh, I can't believe I'm going to tell this story because some people might think I was awful because I lied. I was there was a big festival in Auckland, and I saw this piece of fabric strewn on the ground, and as the crowd was all leaving, and I was just like, oh my God, it's so beautiful. And I was like, oh, I should have picked it up. It was someone's wrap or headscarf or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, and we walked past, and I was just kicking myself because I was just like, strewn fabric, it's meant for me to save. And I was like, maybe someone will come back for it. And then 5 minutes later, I saw this drunk guy come running past me and my friends, and he was wearing it, and he was like chanting and yelling, screaming with the piece of fabric. And I just turned to him and I was like, oh my God,
right,
you found my fabric. And I was like, I dropped it. And just made this big story about how he had picked up my dropped scarf on the ground so that he would give me the fabric.
Oh my goodness.
And it wasn't mine.
Yeah.
But I knew that I was going to do it more justice than that guy was.
Probably, yeah. I think that's safe to say.
But in saying that, it's been so precious, I've never cut into it. And that was literally 10 years ago.
Yeah. I think if you do use it, maybe you should use like a zero waste pattern or something, so you're using every bit of it. Have you sewn with any zero waste sewing patterns?
I did the zero waste coat. Is it Bridget?
I'm going with Birgitta.
Birgitta.
Yeah, I'm going with Birgitta, but I'm only taking that from the Love to Sew podcast.
Okay. Yes. So I really loved that, and I loved DIY Daisy's wrap top. And I just love sewing with squares, so it was quite nice.
I've seen your wrap top, it looks amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, lots of jazzy florals together. We have a great designer here in New Zealand called Fee. Senorita Orsumo is her name, and she's a zero waste designer down in Dunedin.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I had the pleasure of meeting her when I was touring in the van. Yeah. Actually, do you have any sewing tattoos?
No, I don't. I should. Have you?
I don't have any tattoos, and I was thinking about getting a measuring tape. So when I measure a meter of fabric, it goes to across my arm and my shoulder. And so when I'm in the store, I know that that's a meter. So I thought I would get the end of a measuring stick here and on my shoulder, on my wrist and on my shoulder.
Oh my goodness.
And I thought that would be quite a fun thing. And I didn't commit to it because tattoos cost money and a commitment. And then when I met Fee, this awesome, inspiring, like we'd known each other online, we sat down to have lunch together with our click-clack containers, and I could see out the bottom of her sleeves she had 2 measuring tapes, and she has
she did it.
Where the same tattoo that I wanted.
Oh my God, you're like soul sisters or something.
Yeah, she runs a sewing kitchen down in sewing kitchen called Stitch Kitchen.
What's a sewing kitchen?
Yeah, well, it's a sewing workshop space, but it's called Stitch Kitchen. So I guess it's where things are made together and down in the South Island.
Yeah. I love that. I was going to say, I bet you weren't like so into hanging out with her because she's zero waste, so she didn't have any scraps to give you.
Yeah. Totally.
I mean, you've almost answered it, but what makers, businesses or enterprises related to sustainability inspire you? I feel this list could be quite long. I'm ready.
I was thinking about my inspiration. And I guess I have covered a few of them of like of Fee down in the South Island, and DIY Daisy with her bright colours, and also just making sewing accessible. And you don't need to have an industrial machine and lots of space, you know.
Yeah.
I actually am most inspired by, I know they're not businesses, but they're my students, and seeing like beginner sewers give things a go. And one of my very first students is still sewing today and makes so many beautiful garments. It's just really a reminder to me about doing things for the love of it, and loving having hobbies and not necessarily needing to make a business out of it or an Instagram page out of it, and just doing the process of sewing as the art and like being present and being with it. And so that always encourages me and inspires me to do more of that in my life. There's a lot of awesome sustainable designers and ethical fashion advocates and things that, you know, always keep me in check and keep me focused, and I'm always inspired by them. But like truly when it comes to sewing, it's like seeing newbies give it a go and get so pumped about like wearing something that fits them, and for the first time they've had something like truly fit them and they feel fabulous in their body, in their own skin. You know, every single body is completely different. I cannot believe that people go and reach for like 8, 10, 12, 14 off a rack when like our bodies are just longer, shorter, wider, different in all different areas. Yeah. So
I think when you've been sewing for a while as well, you forget that early magic, don't you? So it must be so nice to get to experience that, and it must feel like a real privilege to be kind of part of that for somebody when they're experiencing that for the first time.
Totally. You have to be the guider of patience as well. That's the biggest lesson of sewing, right? Is patience.
Yeah.
But that's part of slowing down, like whether it's gardening or baking or cooking. Part of slowing down is just having patience, of not having instant gratification. And if we have, you know, less stuff is less impact on the planet. So, but it doesn't mean like less love for us, more joy for us.
That was such a lovely way to wrap the conversation up, actually. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story. And you've been the most inspiring person to talk to.
Thank you, Zoe.
Thank you so much.
It's been great to zoom across the planet.
Thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this episode and are left feeling inspired. For more info about the podcast, including show notes for this and every episode, head to checkyourthread.com. I'd love to hear from you, so if you have any comments, questions or ideas for future episodes, please get in touch by emailing zoe@checkyourthread.com or find me on Instagram @checkyourthread. Massive thanks to Patrick Potter for production support, to Sylvia Seller for the awesome logo design, and to Simon at Palm Skin Productions for the music. This ad-free podcast would not be possible without listener support, so if you feel you are able, please consider signing up to the Check Your Thread Patreon. For the equivalent of buying me a coffee each month, you'll be making it possible to continue producing regular episodes. Links can be found in the show notes and on the website checkyourthread.com. I hope you'll listen again next week. Until then, take care. Bye!